intro music? Yeah! Woohoo!
Should you buy Fleet Commander Lorca? Now, this video hopefully will cover everything about Fleet Commander Lorca that you need to know in Star Trek Fleet Command, so if you happen to watch this after it rolls out, well, no worries. But also wanting to discuss the value of this new Fleet Commander and whether you should pursue him here in month 1, and just the general idea of how this works. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not going to answer the question till the very end of the video, so feel free to skip till there, because I want to present factual information before putting an opinion, because most of you aren't here for my opinion anyway. You want to know how things work, so we're going to cover that. Now, you'll notice a change I didn't really like, but it's there right on the right side of your screen is where you can now access your commanders. I actually preferred it at the top. I feel like the UI is getting a little cluttered by just filling in everything. And if you remember back in the day, it's actually when we made this button so we could actually empty the UI. And yeah, I'll say I don't work for them, but we had the battle view button so we could actually empty the UI, and yet we're filling it back up again. So let's talk about Fleet Commander Fleet Commander Lorca. The first Fleet Commander we've had since Sloan, so it's been about 9 months. Now, as you can see, I don't have him, but don't worry, we have plenty of players who do, with plenty of information, and you'll see a lot of that pass through the screen here. To be honest, I think Fleet Commander Lorca has amazing abilities, and this is just like he was sold to be as, pun intended here. He is the most powerful Fleet Commander in the game, and not just because of the fist active ability that you can turn on, which lasts a limited amount of time. We'll cover that in a second. But also because of the actual abilities through the combat, leader, and tactician trees. Now, you're going to find a lot of neat things with the always-on abilities, for example, though if you're getting Fleet Commander Lorca within the next year, probably, you're never going to have him below. He's always going to be active, so not necessarily having to worry as much about the always-on abilities, but even starting off with the officer stat bonus, which goes all the way up to 1,000%, that is handy. But then you look at things like this, the isolytic, that is handy. Look at this one right here. A little bit higher level, obviously, for Apex Barrier, but again, nice. And this is just a couple of the trees we go through, but we're going to look at a lot of these because I feel like they have a lot of value. Warp speed, this one is huge. I was actually talking to a few different players who really value this one quite highly. So shout out to those who participate in helping come together the content of this video. But as you can see here, very, very good warp speed bonus and needed by a lot of players. Tactician also right next to it. Increasing your max cargo on all ships by 150 is actually pretty nice. Now, come on down to here. Piercing values may not be as important for some of you out there, but then you have the piercing and mitigation for armadas, and then finally against regular hostiles. I would actually probably run the armada one with them releasing new armadas, including the new G6 solo armadas. But this has a very nice tactician tree here, which you're going to find a lot of value. You can see again more things that could be nice. Move over to the leader tree. I'm moving right to left here. Seeing the reach cost efficiency materials, that is going to be loved by many and maxing out again at 300%. And you have right next to it repair cost efficiency for both your G5 and G6 players. Again, very, very valuable. But what you're seeing here consistently is very high numbers here, which can be seen as two different things, good and bad. We'll talk about why in a second. But as you can see, increasing efficiency on your artifact shards by 20%. Not as strong as some of the others, but it's selectable. And then there's your tier up catalyst one, which would be the one that I recommend for most players who are going to use Lorca actively. Moving on down to the next set, and you got the on-duty version, which is increasing base efficiency for resources. Not as big of a deal as the mats cost, but still valuable, especially as you get into G5 and need to do a lot of different upgrades. Then you got the efficiency materials. There's the one most of you are going to be looking for, maxing out at 120. Again, very big numbers. Come on down here, you're going to find the same thing for ship components, and maxing out at 350. Getting kind of high numbers, aren't we here? Look on down to Explorer parts and Interceptor parts and Battleship parts. So again, seeing a lot of consistency with big numbers. All three of those going to 500%. Finally, let's do the combat tree real quick. And again, this is me just showing you the numbers of how it goes up. Impulse speed, immediately a bonus for every player, especially if you're a lower level player. Getting some speed in those immediately would be very nice. And then another impulse speed. Pick which one you like. Again, depends on which one you go after. I mean, obviously the after hitting a hostile is nice, but just a flat impulse and wave defense is also super valuable. I would probably go ahead and do the flat one and focus on waves, but if you just want it, generally speaking, I guess it doesn't matter, because during waves, you're going to be hit at least one hostile and to be active. Here's another always on with Lorca shield. Shield boosting, look at this maxing out at 1,000%. Another nice boost. Isolytic damage, again, 20%. These are all getting really big numbers. Increasing hull health, this one's going to go to 1,000%, just like the shield. Then you've got this one, each round, shield effects, critical chance, 20%. Then finally, I'm going to cover Lorca's Fist. So you see, these are ridiculously high numbers. In fact, if we want to talk about how high they are, look at this compared to like all the different things. These are essentially all former primes. All of them are. These are all huge bonuses, massive. It is power creep to the extreme. And we can talk about that being good or bad, but that's what it is. Now, before we get into the opinion section of that, let me go ahead and state the obvious and the facts. The abilities on this, the actual percentages are really, really good. As in they're really high, and most players will notice an effect. And as far as the actual ability, if you're not sure how to operate that, well, if you look on the right side of your screen, I'll actually put up a little quick video here of how to activate it. You're going to have, with Fleet Commander Lorca, the ability to turn on that fist ability, which runs for a very short time, but gives a pretty good boost. And I'll give you some comparison before and afters, so you can kind of see it in effect from a very high level perspective, where we have the famous Istio Cat participating. Appreciate them for sending some of that so that we can show it here on the screen. So it's a short-lived ability that you can use a couple of times a day that'll help you do one big real punch up, but you can only use it limited. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not. I am not sold on it, like I wouldn't invest because of that, but it is something that maybe helps you on a big Q trial, or maybe you have a certain hostile, maybe it's a mission boss that you're struggling with, and this ability, if you have it, will let you do that. Now, let's discuss deeper. Now, for me personally, I'm not purchasing Fleet Commander Lorca, and I would say that this is both a good and bad thing. What I mean by that, let's clarify. I think number one, I don't think this convinces anybody who isn't spending, like myself. Like I'll buy a battle pass here and there now, but I'm not really spending big purchases anymore. And I don't feel like this convinces me to do that. Why? Because it's the primo definition of power creep. And what I mean by that is, this is something that we started talking about very heavily 3 years ago. In fact, the highest levels of the game in terms of VIPs and level 70s complained about this too. You know, the power creep has gotten to such a level, the gap is so wide, you can't overcome that. So what I mean is, if you are a player out there saying, hey, can Lorca help me finally be competitive? The short answer is no. Even with these massive boosts he has, he's not going to make you competitive unless you also have the other things, like, you know, the 2 new FTs that just came out with the Tantalus Field and the brand new one that we just had, and also the new metas for PvP, and also Armada officers, and also. So you run into that as an issue. There's a second part of that. I think a lot of us have been kind of burned by knowing that if we invest into this, because I will say, if you're looking for a positive on whether or not you should invest, the price point to get him max is actually quite low. Now, you can't get any points by just going through your refinery. You can get points, obviously, by leveling up a fleet commander, which works for all fleet commanders. You level them up, you can then get more of the upgrade points. So going through the leveling method allows you to do that. And that won't let you max Fleet Commander Lorca, but then at the moment you can buy a pack. We know that they've already announced that they're going to give a free-to-play path to Lorca, and that's kind of where I'm going to reside, because the second part of this is, not only is this not going to close the gap for me, is I do also know, just by looking at some of the things that I've mentioned, this is not going to have the sustaining power, because the only thing you can do when you create these massive boosts in the game is to then create even more massive boosts to overcome that. So what happens is the 3 fleet commanders I have, you can combine all 3 of these and they're not as valuable as Fleet Commander Lorca is. That doesn't mean that I'm just going to get rid of these. Obviously, I'm going to keep them up and use them. But one Fleet Commander Lorca is better than everything I currently have and have worked years to obtain. But here's the thing. I know what's going to happen again, just as it happened with Strike Team, to Carol Freeman, to the Mirror Universe crew, and then having the Mirror Universe crew at the same time kind of being negated by selling the Tantalus Field. The thing is, I think there's 2 major points here. One, we know that this is not going to help me overcome the big gap that already exists in the game. And 2, I know that this is going to get nullified by something even bigger at some point in the future. And going by historical trends with this game, it's probably less than a year. So I'm just going to free-to-play path this. I'm not going to buy it. Now, at that same juncture, I'm not saying everything's negative, because these boosts are really effective and they're really good. And if you're a player who doesn't care about things like PvP or being the best in your level, and you just actually want to make something that is maybe a valuable purchase that speeds up things in your game right now, well, Lorca absolutely will do that. I mean, he will wrong direction. He will absolutely make your gameplay better. But if you're one of those players who's always debating on, well, should I make this purchase? And the return on investment is simple. We know a free-to-play path is coming. Shout out to Scopely for announcing that. That is a positive. This is definitely not meant to be a negative video. This is simply meant to be a, hey, If we know that a free-to-play path is coming, even if it takes months to obtain it, and I know that something's going to come out that negates the value, because remember, we talked about Sloan being arguably the most valuable fleet commander in the game when he came out, and he came out with a free-to-play path. People who are going to purchase things are probably already spenders, which, by the way, means that those people are already probably buying this. So if you were hoping that this would close the gap, well, guess what? They already got this too. So Luther Sloan came out 9 months ago. And yet you now have a fleet commander who grossly outperforms him. So what you would be paying for is to have it now and take advantage of that now, which is the same logic you would apply to ships, etc. If you really want to have it earlier on to take advantage of the bonuses now and maybe have more return on your investment because you got to enjoy those longer, well then go for it. But me personally, no, I don't find the value because it's such an egregious example of creep in the game, and I think that we need more balance. I am much more willing to invest in mechanics financially that have long staying power, and I just don't see that with Fleet Commander Lorca unless they're going to come out and say that Fleet Commander Lorca is now the last of the Mohicans, as it were, the last of the fleet commanders, and this is just simply the mechanic hitting a wrap point. You can get all the fleet commanders you want. You could have 5 slots. But you could just be the person who has 1 fleet commander in Lorca better than all 5. Like if I had Kirk, Sloan, Spock, 7 of 9, and Janeway all up at the same time, which keep in mind I would have to spend money to make that possible, none of those combined would be as good as this one. So there's not really that, progression system. It's more of, well, you have the new thing or you don't. Again, these are still good to have. I'm not saying just like, oh, fleet commanders are dead. I'm simply saying that I'm not willing to invest in something that has such a massive jump, knowing that the only way to improve upon that is to do a massive jump. And I know this is a double-edged sword because they said so in their announcement, that they heard feedback that fleet commanders weren't strong enough, etc. This goes back to what I said earlier in the video. 3 years ago, you really started to see this idea of power creep get more and more, numbers just scaling higher and higher. And the only way to combat that is to either reset the platform itself and not necessarily start from scratch, but kind of make a clean slate, or just simply boost the numbers more and more. And where I'm at, I'm just going to get the value of obtaining him free to play, however long that takes. But if you're one of those players who would like to have those awesome bonuses that do exist and you'd like to have them now, you can go after it and spend financially. For me, I want to buy something that lasts me a long time, and I feel like I'm going to get my money's worth out of it. Specialty ships, I feel like I get that. If I unlock a specialty ship early, take the NX-01, take the NSCA Protector, even take older things like the Italios. Those things have a long shelf life and a long active life, whereas Fleet Commander Lorca is probably going to get outdated just like Sloan was, yet I'm still using my Talios from 3 years ago. Those things I find more enjoyment on, and it gets me really incentivized to invest in something, even if it's just getting it a little bit earlier. Whereas Fleet Commander Lorca, I'm like, hey, I can't wait to have the bonuses, but do I really want to buy something? I view him the same way that I view Strike Team officers and Mirror Universe officers. Like, yeah, they're good, but why do I want to invest in something that I know eventually will be overridden? That's kind of how I feel here, where even though he's great, not only is he weakening these, he's also kind of nullifying several hundred research nodes. And what I mean by that is the game makes you upgrade the research nodes. You can't just really ignore all of them, because as you want to progress deeper and deeper, you kind of need to do the old ones. But there's so many in here now that you have to do that are literally several thousand days worth of time that has to be spent, not counting speed ups, obviously, to upgrade that don't matter because of things like singular items of Fleet Commander Lorca. And there's 2 ways to look at that in this very long video. The first way to look at it is, hey, I'm getting it and I have these big numbers and now I'm strong. Or the second way is, dang, all this work that I've been doing 6 years in this game just got nullified by a single item that I know is going to get nullified again probably within a year. So definitely not trying to argue that Star Trek Fleet Command and their game designers have an easy job, but this is the danger of power creep, where you keep adding more, and because there's not a balance in that more, at least in my viewpoint, all you can do is override it with the next big thing. And I tend to play the game casually, I guess. Not that I'm not on every day, because I absolutely am, but I'm not really investing in all these new metas. And again, Fleet Commander Lorca, if you're here for the actual numbers, very good. But if you're here because you want to know whether I think it's a solid investment, I don't, because I do think he's going to get kind of phased into something else sometime soon. And we know there's a free path coming. So if I'm going to invest in something, I want something that I know I'm going to enjoy for a long amount of time. And that means something that I'm probably going to use. So I'll stick to if the occasional ship buy, battle passes, but I'll hold back on Lorca. But very curious to know what you think in the comment section down below. Are you going to get Fleet Commander Lorca? Do you like him? Are the temptations of these huge numbers so great that you simply can't ignore? And if so, let me know how much you enjoyed him. There's no wrong answer here. Play the game how you want to play. I believe in one simple phrase now. Ignore FOMO, have fun. And if you are having fun getting Lorca, awesome. If you're having fun ignoring Lorca, awesome. Key is, hopefully everybody's having fun in this game. Live long and plunder, stay safe with our Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Hope you enjoyed the research. Thanks to the people who helped make this video possible. And we'll see you on the next one. Sorry for the length.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.